I was the first kid, and my parents were busy at work often, and I'm not entirely sure. In fact, I'm not sure anyone actually knows, but I think they were not entirely sure what they were doing as parents. I think they had the best intentions, of course. But in terms of like, yeah, what do we actually do to be successful parents? I'm not sure they actually knew, but I think they did provide lots of love and tried to guide me to the best opportunities. Of course we had like conflicts, and I also feel.
What's good, Mimer Timers? Mime Timers. I hope you guys are having a great July and a great summer. I know I am. You know why? Because it's always mime time. Oh. So for the third episode of Mime Time ever, that was a cheeky minute ago, the third episode ever, I interviewed two of my really good bros, Chris Kim and Jun Yoon. Shout out to those guys big time for encouraging me to start my own podcast. For those of you who don't know, Chris Kim started the Badass Asian Dudes podcast and community. And if you're listening to this, you may very well be in the community already. So shout out to all my Badass Asian Dudes. Hard. I've also been immensely fortunate to be a part of this community, as well as interview some of the guys who I've met through it, including the guest for today's episode, Michael Wu. Michael Wu is a co-host of the Badass Asian Dudes podcast/community and software engineer at Stripe, which is one of the most highly evaluated private companies in the world. He's a Taiwanese-American brother from Silicon Valley who went to fulfill his dreams of living and working in Japan, learning the language and culture, and eating all the sushi he can find, cooking dope food, throwing dope parties, and living the dream, going on adventures around the world and shit like that. It's awesome. Today's episode is the first half of our conversation. And for part one, we will talk about what it means to be a badass Asian dude, getting a lot out of giving to a community as a leader. We talk about what life was like for him growing up in a Taiwanese-American household and what it was like for me growing up in my Korean-American household. And, we appreciate the differences and our struggles and whatnot going through it. And we talk about our parents' struggles as immigrants and how fortunate our generation is because of their sacrifice. And we talk about the power and joy of cooking for oneself and others and finding independence in that and being gracious toward our parents. So after this episode, please tune in for part two, which is going to come out next week, which is going to be filled with even juicier content and elite woke wisdoms. So please stay tuned. If you enjoyed today's episode, please send me some feedback. Either email me at mime@mimetime.com or DM me at mimetime on whichever platform, Instagram, Twitter. And if there's someone who would relate or get something out of this episode, please share it with them. Please enjoy the episode and have a great week. Oh, baby, you know what time it is? It's mime time.
Holy shit, I'm getting recorded.
Holy shit, you are getting recorded. We are getting recorded for another episode of Mime Time. Everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm your host, Mime, and this is not just Mime Time, aka my time, but it's also your time, and it's our time, and it's also our guest, Michael Wu's time. We have an awesome guest, someone who actually I've been wanting to talk to on the show for a long time. Michael Wu, welcome. How are you doing?
What's up? Doing great. Just had cooked up a steak for dinner, and I'm chilling back in Tokyo.
Yeah, happy birthday, by the way. Belated happy birthday. Yeah,
Thanks,
how was it?
Great. I had a bunch of people over for, we rented out a rooftop for a July 4th barbecue. Had a great time. Great turnout. Felt like Tokyo was coming back to life. I don't know. It's nice. It's nice every year. Yeah.
Man, I can't wait to go again. That was the first time I ever took a solo trip to anywhere in my life. So I came to Korea in 2012, and that was the first time in my life that I kind of started living on my own and making money. And then the first time in my life, and I was like 20, I was about 20 years old. And that was the first time in my life with my own money that I had traveled to another country by myself for like 14 days. And like I had It was the first and one of the best trips of my life. All my trips have been very wonderful throughout Asia, but man, I love Japan. Sometimes I think, man, it'd be cool to live in Japan for a while. And then I meet someone like you who's living that dream. And I just think that that's so cool. So I really want to get into it with you today. For the listeners, I met Michael through the Badass Asian Dudes community, which is a podcast started by my young Chris Kim. I interviewed him in one of the very first episodes of this show, and he was actually a big influence in helping me start this podcast. So shout out to Chris Kim and all our badass Asian dudes out there. Michael, how did you join the community? How did you find out about Badass Asian Dudes?
Badass Asian Dudes.
Mm.
Yeah, I had one of my friends, good friends in LA, Luke Shea, invite me in like November 2019. I think at that point I was on the upward path. Like I think I had just regained a lot of confidence in like the few months past. I always like community, and when I saw like community of guys who look like me, who are striving, successful, intelligent, brave, confident, I was like, I want to meet these people. Like I want to network with them. I want to like help build this community. This sounds great. Yeah. And as that went on, early 2020, when Chris stepped back a bit from that, he reached out to another guy, Sabo, as well as me, to ask if we wanted to take over as like admins and moderators of the Badass Asian Dudes community. So we took that over then and have been rolling with it ever since.
Yeah, and shout out to Sabo and the other co-hosts out there. And I just want to say, I think you guys have been doing a fantastic job taking care of the community and helping it grow and helping encourage all the members. And I think it's great that you all have your own unique voices and experiences and perceptions of what it means to be a badass Asian dudes, and all the friends and people that you've brought into the community as well have, just keep contributing, and then they bring their friends as well. And it's just so crazy to see how the community has grown. How many members are we at now at this point? Like
we're at
1,600, 1,400? Yeah,
1,500, something like that.
It's so cool,
yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
And for the badass Asian dudes out there listening, I mean, maybe some of this might be redundant, but for my audience, I'd like to just, go into this a bit more. Michael, what does being a badass Asian dude mean to you? And like, what did it mean for you, like as a kid? Did you have any role models? And what does it look like for you today?
Yeah. This is a question that we ask our guests, so I've answered this a couple of times too myself. To me, being a badass Asian dude is developing your own capabilities and confidence so that you can make the impact in the world that you want. And ideally, that is like, giving back to those like your community and those around you.
That's awesome.
Getting yourself in that position where you can do that with like confidence.
How has joining the community and being one of the leaders, like I'm sure, even if they're just lurking, I'm sure there are a lot of people who listen to you or read your posts and follow what you say or you do. Like, how has this been affecting your life since you joined?
Yeah. So I feel like I tend to fill in the vacuum of leadership. If I don't see someone doing something and I want to do, and like that's something I want, I will just go do it. So in this case, and I also love building communities, because honestly, I just want to share. I want to connect with other people. I want to be like inspiration. I want to give people knowledge. So in this case, it's a really good match, honestly. And the more you do it, the more it just becomes natural. And as well as the more connections you make and the more you get yourself out there in that kind of position, like people look back to you and there's some like respect going on. And I feel like you give a lot, but you get a ton out of it too. So it's another facet where I think that's been an important development in my life. Growing up, I was a skinny, nerdy Asian dude. I mean, I wasn't like depressed and crying or getting beat up by bullies all the time, but I was pretty awkward, failed to get girls, whatever. Did math and chess and studied hard and didn't really party, but it was fine. But I didn't have that confidence in myself at that point in time. I would do well. I would do well in school. I'd do well in tests. I'd do well, in extracurricular activities, whatever. But I didn't have that inner confidence, and I think that's something that going through like the end of college, grad school, I think I was like, wait, you know what? I'm doing decently well. I should have that confidence. And then at that point I started to open up out of my shell and become like the super connector, super energetic person who's everywhere, doing everything. And then to your last point there, I think I really looked up to my dad when I was growing up. He was like a VP at like a big like Silicon Valley tech firm at that point. And he to me he just like seemed super smart, super smart, super rational and capable. So I did really look up to him, and he did teach me a lot of things. I mean no person is perfect, but I think I did learn a lot from my dad. And outside of that, you'd see people in the media, and you look up to them. People like Jackie Chan. You see Jackie Chan on screen, and like look up to them. And those were kind of I think those were kind of my role models growing up. But I think primarily, the people closest to me who affected me a lot when I was growing up. People like my dad or sports coaches or whoever. Yeah.
That's cool, man. Would you tell us a little bit more about your background? You were like born and raised in Silicon Valley?
Yeah. I tell people I'm a fake Texan because I was actually born in Austin.
Ah,
My parents came to the U.S. in like the mid '80s when they were like 25 or so, 25 like late 20s or so. They first landed in Chicago, where my dad was doing his PhD at Northwestern, and then after that he graduated. He moved the family down to Austin, Texas, for I think it was at Texas Instruments. I think possibly
mm, the
could have been
calculators.
another company. Could have been another company.
Okay, could have been another company that does
But
calculators.
it was definitely it was like a Texas tech company, doing like hardware stuff. And then I was born, and then all the families that we had in the U.S. Total of like three families. We all ended up moving, all eventually ended up congregating in Silicon Valley, where the most of the rest of my cousins were born in Silicon Valley, and then basically all our family in the U.S. is still right there mostly, and mostly like the South Bay and Peninsula of Silicon Valley.
Wow.
Yeah,
That sounds like I mean, typical sounds too blasé, but I mean, that sounds like an Asian immigrant story, Asian family
yeah,
immigrant story, like where our parents come to America and they move around a bit, and then they find a place that's most optimal for them. I think
exactly.
that's really cool. I mean, did your parents come? Like, did they have a lot of resources, or did they know anyone or have connections? I mean, you said your dad came to study first.
Yeah, yeah. He came as a PhD student, and I think during that time there was a lot of migration of Taiwanese immigrants, usually from like well educated backgrounds, like doing PhDs, or higher education in the U.S. I wouldn't say my family was. I wouldn't call them well off. They were fine. Both my parents grew up in like somewhat of poverty. My dad from like a farming background, and my mom my granddad from my mom's side passed away early, like kind of leaving like my grandma to like feed seven children by herself. Like
Wow.
so that was tough. So they went from like doing well in the community to be like no income, and then kind of like getting poorer and poorer from that. But I think they both were like very smart. They studied a lot in school, went through the Taiwanese education system, and like a lot of Taiwanese immigrants at that time saw America as this better place. So I think they knew it, and I think they had a decent like support network in forms of my other family members and like other Taiwanese, especially from similar background, that could help them out there. So I think they managed to like get themselves on the right foot. Like once everyone like found employment after like graduating, then I think after that it was mostly fine. Like there was like a definite like upward trajectory without any yeah, without like huge speed bumps that way. And I think that was pretty typical of the that wave of Taiwanese immigration. And tons of Taiwanese ended up in like Cupertino, South Bay area, which is where we spent a bit of time before like moving to the neighboring town.
Mm. That's cool, man. I mean, that's great for your family. I'll be a bit transparent there. Like our family did not have that support system. Like from what I understand, my family went through a very rough financial period, and like this is like the family myth that supposedly my grandfather, as in my father's father, inherited like some silver mines, and was like this was before the Korean War, and this was in like Pyeongan-bukdo, which is like the northwestern part of North Korea now, and so like that family, that Kim clan was, a wealthy land owning clan. Because of the war, well, we lost all those resources, and my grandfather was supposedly a very talented, educated person who could speak like several different languages, like Russian and Japanese and English, or something like that. I could be messing up the details. And he was supposedly a very intelligent man who turned to, I think, alcohol and womanizing and depression, and I think like maybe squandered some of the family's wealth away. So, anyways, and so my father grew up like right at like during the war, at the end of the war, and our family like grew up in poverty. My mom's father, my maternal grandfather, was like a building owner. Like he had some assets, but then the government supposedly seized it, and like that, my mom's side of the family lost everything. She grew up kind of spoiled actually, but then she had to lose a lot of this stuff. So then she met my dad, and then it was just it was pretty much hardship from Korea all the way going up to America. So our family struggled a lot, and I just want to bring this up, not so that anyone feels sorry for me or whatever, or for my family, but just obviously like a spectrum within the Asian diaspora experience, and even within one particular ethnicity, whether you're Taiwanese American. I'm sure there's plenty of there's
Yeah,
some Taiwanese Americans who struggled, came to America with maybe no money or no support system, but
of course.
they struggled and they still made it happen. And just as there's Koreans who come to America, and then they come with nothing, and they still made it happen. And I'm proud to say that in the end, I think me and my brothers, we turned out quite well. So me, I'm the black sheep. My two older brothers, they're talented, educated doctors. I'm the one who came out to Asia to kind of party and be in the search for myself. Because I was more lost in touch
Yeah,
with my. They grew up in Korea. They went to elementary school in Korea as kids, so they grew up speaking the language, and they were more in the culture when they went to America. Whereas I never had that because I was 1 year old when we went to America. So for me, and then like I came to Korea, and like, I'm a college dropout, to be frank. And I came to Korea to explore myself and go to open mics and play guitar and sing and do stand up comedy and spoken word poetry and meet people. And I'm very happy and grateful for my path. Me being the youngest, like it's like not, the oldest siblings, they have the burden of having more responsibility, and then the younger ones, they're given more freedom and leeway, I think, later on. So I think that's what happened to me. Is that I was fortunate. I got more love and acceptance to do what I want in a way. But
yeah. I know you're right. That shows that even within like the East Asians were stereotypically supposedly better off. There's a broad spectrum of experiences, and even within, well, yeah, like one country, one ethnicity. Yeah, despite those stereotypes, it's actually pretty diverse.
yeah,
And
yeah, it's a diverse range of experiences, and my mom and I, we talk about sometimes that she talks to other old ajashis and ajumas, old people, other Korean old people, her generation or older, around the Korean communities, and they talk, and she tells me, "Ma, I'm actually, in spite of all the hardships that our family went through." Like financially and whatever dysfunction and abuse or whatever we went through, mine, you have to think we actually have come out really, really well, because there are so many families, people who came from Korea. Maybe they like were building owners, or maybe they, had some assets in Korea, and then maybe they sold it, but they went and took those assets to America, and then they failed at their enterprise, and they're still struggling like decades later, or they just never really made it.
Yeah.
and they're still living paycheck to paycheck. I don't know, maybe an exaggeration, but we're really fortunate to
Yeah.
have not only been able to grow up in America and I think be healthy, well-rounded individuals, but even to have the privilege and the spirit of adventure to want to go back to Asia and
Yeah.
see shit and try different foods and meet people and it's I've always just bring this up because I'm so grateful to our
Yeah.
parents for what
I
they did.
Yeah, I think so too. I think if you're doing well, or even if you're not doing well, I think there's no changing the past. So you might as well be at least, yeah, accept it, be grateful it, and yeah, figure out how to like live well going in the future, in the present and the future.
Yeah. And I want to ask, I'd like to get a little more personal with you, Michael. Oh,
Yeah.
baby. What
Oh
was it?
baby.
What was it like for you growing up with your parents? Do you have any siblings, by the way?
Yeah, I have a younger sister. She's 3 years younger than me, and yeah, also back in California. It was reasonably good, I think. I think, to be honest, they I was first kid, and my parents were busy at work often, and I'm not entirely sure. In fact, I'm not sure anyone actually knows, but I think they were not entirely sure what they were doing as parents. I think they had the best intentions, of course. But in terms of like, yeah, what do we actually do to be successful parents? I'm not sure they actually knew, but I think they did provide lots of love and tried to guide me to the best opportunities. Of course we had like conflicts, and I also feel like sometimes growing up as a parent of immigrants, when they're like they're mostly assimilated, I'd say. I'm like totally fluent English and stuff, but they didn't there's a bunch of stuff they didn't know about what it meant to be American, and so sometimes I feel like I hadn't learned everything yet, going until I got to the outside world and like got myself more experiences. There's like little things like American mannerisms, or like little details like table manners, or like how to clean up properly, or whatever like that. But no, I mean, I think I had a pretty reasonably good childhood. I got to do most of the things I wanted to do, and had lots of opportunities. But yeah,
That's awesome, man. I'm kind of
yeah,
jealous hearing that. But
yeah,
I'm grateful to my parents too because I
yeah.
feel actually being the youngest of three that compared to my brothers because in Korean we say 막내 아들, right? 막내 meaning like the youngest. And
Oh,
so
okay.
I'm gonna receive the most love and I'm gonna be the one who's most likely to be spoiled. So I think my parents did give me that way more than my brothers. I think my parents took out their frustration and their stress and whatever more out on my brothers, and they had my older brothers and who are way older than me. I mean, way like 10 and 12 years older. So I think my brothers got kind of like the brunts of like the first parent, like my parents, were being parents for the first time. And so, I think my brothers got most of the pressure and just like I said, frustration taken on them. But then when it came to me, there was a lot less of that, and there was just more like love and affection, and I think I was given a lot of freedom. Like, yeah, go kind of do what you want. Um,
Yeah.
so
My sister and I guess we're only 3 years apart, so I feel like the treatment was mostly the same. I think she got a little more of the brunt than I did. I think I was given a little more leeway because I think I think I showed myself to be more competent early on.
uh,
I mean, we both turned out fine, and I'm also pretty close to my sister. I mean, we never like really fought or anything when growing up, and then now afterwards, it's turned into like a close because we like care about each other, but maybe we don't know each other like that deeply, but we definitely like care and look out for each other. Yeah,
well, I mean, that's cool, man. It sounds like your family situation, just on the surface level of what you're saying. Like,
yeah,
I mean, that sounds, I mean,
yeah,
arguably better than many family situations.
totally,
Maybe better than
totally.
like a lot of Asian immigrants' families.
Yeah,
I like because I
yeah,
know so many families with like say abusive parents,
yeah.
or just like very dysfunctional households, and one of which that
Right,
I grew up in. And
right.
I want to ask, switching gears just a little bit, and with family, I want to ask, like, did your parents try to instill like this Taiwanese heritage in you? Did you grow up speaking Mandarin? What was that like?
Yeah, but it was never forced or anything. It just felt kind of natural. I didn't really think too much of it. There was a lot of tons of Taiwanese people. We were in a pretty Taiwanese community. I got, I was sent to like a Taiwanese run Chinese school every evening on a Friday. But it wasn't like I was forced or anything. I mean, I wanted to go. I wanted to learn. I didn't like love learning Chinese, but I was like, it's kind of cool. I might as well learn. But yeah, I just kept going to that, and it was semi-effective. I mean, mostly later on, the reason I kept going was I had a crush on a girl on a girl at Chinese school for like 6 years. Didn't work.
Girls.
Didn't work.
It
But
didn't
I
work,
was like, man, I want to go to Chinese school every Friday.
oh, but hey, you see, girls are great motivation. Women, thank you. They're great motivation for us to want to improve ourselves, and
Yeah,
maybe learn the language. I mean, yeah. So like, hey, what'd you get? Yeah, chasing the girl was a failure. Like you, what's the proverb, right? Uh, you have to push the great. So this is like a faux Asian accent. Like you have to push the stone. Like the master who tells the student to
yeah,
try to push a great boulder with all his might, and then
yeah,
for like 60 days, and then the student isn't able to move the stupid boulder, and it's like, master, sensei, whatever. I don't know, I don't remember where this comes from, so sorry audience, I'm butchering this, but the student's pissed at the master because like, master, why would you tell me try to move this fucking rock just by pushing it? I can't move this boulder. And then the master, but son, see how jacked your arms are. See, you've learned discipline and diligence and perseverance. And this is very rough parallel to, you tried to chase the girl, you tried to push this rock or whatever. This is terrible, maybe a terrible analogy, but hey, you learned some Chinese, so
yeah, yeah. I mean, it felt natural. It just felt like I was getting like half immersed. I mean, we'd speak some Chinese at home. Later on, like when I was almost about to leave home, like 11th grade, I kind of developed more pride in like wanting to learn Chinese, and I got better at that. And I tried to speak more then. But I mean, given that there are so many Asians in the community and it's mostly Taiwanese, there wasn't any sort of like bullying or backlash for being Asian. So there's no reason to like, there's no reason to hate it, I guess, because I guess nothing was ever like that forced on me except for getting dragged to like a Buddhist monastery to to watch over the graves of our ancestors or whatever, like every year. That those trips were kind of annoying, but but other than that, yeah, it's nothing was forced and it was just around me. So I guess I picked up a lot of it just by osmosis and just being in that environment.
I think that sounds natural. That sounds like a natural, healthy kind of Asian immigrant, like being immersed in your culture and stuff like that.
Yeah.
For me, it's really interesting that I'm really glad that you're sharing your experiences and how your family life was growing up, because to compare and contrast with mine, like I also went to Korean school on Saturdays at the local Korean church, and I would, how do I say this? I would be so put off. But like, God damn it, mom, dad, like I want to stay home and watch cartoons, Saturday morning cartoons. I want to watch Ed, Ed and Eddie or whatever. I don't want to go to school and learn Korean. Like this
So
is
there wasn't a girl there you had a crush on.
um no, and you know what? Maybe even if there was at that time, I think I hated myself so much. I had such a like a self confidence. Like I think I had such a low self confidence issue, and I hated myself so much that I was like no girl's ever gonna like me. So even if I see a girl, like I'm just like I would shove away girls like mentally. I would distance myself if I thought one was cute or whatever, because out of fear that they wouldn't like me. And this was something that was deeply ingrained in me. I think since I was a kid in general, that's like the mental state I was coming from. So even if there was a girl, I mean, I don't know, maybe that's one reason why I didn't learn Korean, is because there wasn't a Korean girl for me to have a crush on at Korean school. If only there was one. And you know what? The funny thing is, going back to what we said earlier, I mean, yeah, girls are also, no joke, a reason why I learned Korean, because I wanted to meet and date some Korean girls, and I have a Korean girl friend. So mission accomplished. I did it. I fucking did it, guys. It just took me 20, I don't know, 20 plus years of my life to finally learn my own mother tongue and then date a Korean girl. And for me, it means a lot. I may have mentioned this in another episode in the past or whatever, but for me, this really does mean a lot. So thank you, women. You really inspire us men too. not just get in touch with our roots, but try to meet you.
I've
And
got a weakness for Korean women as well. I'm gonna try to pick up more. I'm gonna try to brush up my Korean after I just took the Japanese level language test and I think I did well. So I think I'll move on, switch back to Korean for a bit.
yeah, man, you told you totally should. I mean, it's cool, and I want to definitely get into your adventure in Japan and you
Yeah,
learning Japanese for sure. But I want to finish my point about going to Korean school, and one of the reasons why I didn't want to go is because like I felt like so insecure. I think it could be a variety of factors. I was so insecure about my identity and whatever. So one way is like I tried to pick a side, like no, I'm American and I speak English. This is my first language. I've never been to Korea, so why should I care? Blah 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 blah. Because I was fighting with my parents because I didn't trust them because even though looking back they were doing the best that they can and they wanted to preserve the culture and the language in me. I feel bad for my mom especially because she did do a lot. She did try to teach me Korean, but I just wouldn't have it. And from my perspective was because like I felt like they didn't want to listen to me because they didn't understand the struggles that I was going through at school, right? But how could they? At the same time, how could I have appreciated the struggles that they were going through trying to make a living in America, trying to survive and provide for their sons. So for me, like I just had that big block of wanting to learn Korean, and so I wanted to divorce myself from my roots, right? Because family and your ethnicity, I mean, these things are so closely tied when you're a
yeah,
minority, especially in a given
yeah,
society. These things are amplified, and so if you have a problem with your ethnic family who's a minority in some country, doesn't matter if you're Asian immigrant in America, you could be, I don't know, you could be black in France maybe. And like if you have a problem with your black family, then you're gonna maybe subconsciously not want to associate with other black people and just hang out with just French people. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like these things can
yeah,
happen. And in a way, that's what happens to some subset of Asian diaspora. I think sometimes
yeah,
we have such a traumatic experience with our families that or our culture, our heritage, the people associated with it that we just kind of shy away from that. So then we just hang out with only say white friends or whichever community that else we can cleave to. So yeah. Anyways, thank you for sharing your background. I'm glad that you grew up the way that you did from what you tell me. I think that's cool. And I heard in the episode, right, with the badass Asian dudes co-hosts coming
yeah,
together and like giving the introduction that when your mom wasn't home, you'd go to a grocery store and go shopping, right? So when did you
yeah.
start? When did you start cooking? Because I know you're big into food.
Yeah, it was like probably mid high school. As I told you earlier, both my parents worked till somewhat late. They come back at like 7 or 8 p.m. or
Mm,
something like that. And usually it was my mom who cooked. Um, my dad was a disaster cooking, although he's gotten a lot better during COVID. Like things look actually presentable now. So it was mostly my mom who cooked, and she was okay. My aunt was better, but she was okay. But then so I'd be like, well, like I want to, eat something that's flavored my way or like more American or whatever. So once I got that car or like once I had the bike and like middle of high school, I just, would go over to the grocery store after I got back from school and just be like, you know what? I want to make this today and pick up the ingredients and come back and just make it myself. So just kind of started from there. I didn't really cook much in college. Obviously, there's dorms and the cafeteria there. But going into grad school, yeah, kept going. Like started to buy a lot of equipment and thing. I think there's something about like people who likes people who like food plus engineers. You kind of see this thing. You kind of see like cooking like an engineering problem. Like you're creating something that you're gonna enjoy, and like just by doing some like problem solving, you can get some really good stuff for just a little effort and creativity. So I think that's the philosophy I'm applying going forth. And now I'm like now I'm crazy. I have like all sorts of equipment. I have dinner parties all the time. But it's just a huge source of enjoyment for me. Having people over and making really good things and having good company, having people enjoy the things I make. It's just a really great feeling. So
I'm so glad I'm so glad you shared that because I've recently just discovered what that joy is myself. just a few weeks ago, I had 3 guests come over to my place and I cooked them a meal for the first time. I had never cooked for like 3 other people before. Like I've had, maybe with a girlfriend or a date or like one other friend. Yeah, I've cooked a meal or 2 before in the past, but it wasn't something that I was really proud of necessarily. Actually, I mean, there were times, but more recently, like I rediscovered how much cooking can be enjoyable. So like I had 3 people over and I like, oh, they're coming, and I timed like the preparation of all the ingredients right so that when they came and I seasoned everything just right and they loved it. They said it was delicious and they were so happy. And there's a lot tied up that led up to this moment, and there's so many things that I want to unpack here. But recently in my last episode, my birthday episode, I talk about all the terrible mistakes I've made throughout my 20s. And one of them relates to finance, and which includes investing and saving. And I focus a lot on saving, the importance of saving money and the importance of having a healthy diet, and also how if you have a clean and organized home and kitchen and a system of like getting the groceries, like unpacking them, everything, like all these meticulous steps, if you can just get these things organized, then you put the ingredients together and chop up the onions or whatever. You put it all together and you enjoy the process and you find what you enjoy cooking and tasting and eating, then it's like the benefits are tenfold. Because one, if you're eating good, healthy, delicious food, you can eat as much of it as you want, right? Because if you do it right, groceries don't have to be expensive. And two, you save money on going out. And three, you have the pride of feeding yourself, which is a because underneath feeding yourself is independence, because like that's like just the basic animal survival foundation for existence is, can you survive and can you provide for yourself? Obviously we're not all farmers
Yeah.
and we're not living the farming, or like we're not like preppers living in the wood. I mean, those guys are really off the grid, like they're really doing it, the hunters and whatnot, or like the Inuit up there in the ice. Shout out to my Inuit. But and it's not like I didn't try to cook before, but I just, with my lifestyle, I was busy working. I was making a lot more money. So like, yeah, I can afford and splurge and spend 30, 50, 100 bucks here and there for a meal or a night out with friends. And what I'm trying to say is like, I'm kicking myself so hard for not saving money. I just realized like there's thousands or maybe tens of thousands of dollars I spent on, not even, this isn't even including alcohol, but just on food, that if I could have just instead cooked all of that at home for a fraction of the price. And if I wanted to, I could have had friends over and had awesome dinner parties like you, because I've only recently discovered that joy. And I've been to other friends' dinner parties who cook me food and it's amazing. We all have a good time. And I see how much joy they have in feeding me. And then so now and I'm 29, I'm just discovering this. And like, oh shit, I could have been cool like Michael or like my other friend, I should have learned this sooner. So now what I'm trying to tell you, Michael, is that next time you come to Seoul, I'm going to have to fucking cook for you, bro.
All right, man. I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, no, I mean, it's just something that I think basic life still. I mean, wherever you are, it's just good to pick up. And there's no shame in not having picked that up till now.
Yeah. Would you
And I fucking
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, and I fucking love supermarkets, man. Grocery shopping. Like
Okay.
I'm known to go to like 3 supermarkets in a row. Like literally before this episode, I was swinging by the local one just to see if they any like I'll do this every single day. I know when they like do the 50% off sales at the end of the day, and I'll just swing by and I'll just
Ah.
like snag everything. So like I got a bunch of like 50% off fruit at a 50% off steak. I was like, yeah, good stuff.
Man, I
And
think
I mean, I make
that's
this,
awesome.
I make all this money, and I can afford going out. But like, it's just, I don't know, it's just a simple point of joy and living a reasonable and independent lifestyle to me, at least.
Yeah, exactly. And that, and going to the dinner party thing, like just having friends over and then cooking for them and then them enjoying what you make for them. I mean, wow, like now I know how mothers feel like. And now I know how you, Michael, feel like, even though I've only done it a couple times, but I'm just like, oh man, I should have been doing this years ago. And if I was just at a better mental space, or like I wasn't so busy and I just took time to do this, then, I could have enjoyed this so much more. And now, like, this is all I want to do. All I want to do is like when I have time, invite people over or go to my friend's place and then we cook together in his kitchen and he teaches me recipes. Like this is now a newfound joy because one of my good friends who's like cooked me my birthday meal every year for the past 5 years or so. He's like my favorite cook. He used to run his own restaurant nearby my neighborhood, and he used to work at a Michelin. He left it, but now it's a Michelin star restaurant in Seoul. And it's like he's always cooked for me, but I never really took the time to ask him, "Hey, man, can you cook for me?" And he could have always done that for me. I should have asked him and been more intentional about it years ago. I should have gone for that ask. So I want to ask you: would you recommend to the audience that they learn to cook for themselves and enjoy the process?
Yeah, 100%.
Mm.
And all respect to mothers, by the way. That
All
is a
respect
whole
to
different
others.
ball game.
Yeah, all
Like
respect to
they have
mothers.
to feed the kid every day, and no matter what. So total respect. No, for sure. For me, it's just like a fundamental part. Yeah, it's a fundamental part of being, and you don't have to go that fancy. I mean, if you're bulking or working out or something, learn to cook up a bunch of chicken breasts and broccoli or something, so you can have your meal prep. Yeah, make it as easy as possible for you, so that you still enjoy it and you don't get frustrated. Yeah, make the entire week of meals at the same time or something, if that's what you think you'll save you time. And but then you have total control of that process then, and you can enjoy the fruits of your own labor. Yeah.
Indeed. And since I learned like how to cook and do the dishes and clean and organize the kitchen consistently and all this stuff and all the work that goes into shopping and preparing food and cooking it and then cleaning after and putting it away, all that time, it makes me appreciate the decades that my mom fed me and my brothers, how she raised three sons and fed her husband as well. And I'm just like, as time goes on, I'm like, oh, this is like my mom had to do this times 5, times 10 on top of all the household stuff. So being a household mom, like taking care of like a house with like 4 men, 4 boys, right? My two brothers, me and my dad, I understand, I appreciate her struggle a lot more. Also, another thing is like I sort of resent my mom for not teaching me stuff in the kitchen or like at least not even like letting me help her with dishes and stuff as a kid. Cause I feel like a part of me as a kid wanted to help. I could see how she was struggling, but I felt like she wouldn't let me because she didn't have the time to teach the kid like who's going to be really fucking slow and awkward washing the dishes, like how to get shit done. So there's a little back and forth I have in this mental process, but now, I appreciate my mom's cooking even more than I did when I was a kid now and what she did for me. And now I can't wait. My mom went back to the States a couple months ago and I'll join her soon. And I keep sending her pics of what I've been cooking. Like, mom, like I really love cooking now. I can't wait for you to cook for my mom. Like now I want to cook for my mom and repay her in a way. Or I can never repay my mom, but I just want to like feed her. I think that would be that's a wonderful thing for a son to do, for the mom who's fed him his whole life. Anyways, I'm
Yeah.
just talking too much.
Hi, Mrs. Kim.
I'll tell you, say what's up. And also thanks so much for, being so kind to me and my mom when you came. Like it was so good to hang out with you. And my mom really
Sure.
loved spending time with you. And when we got malatang together, it like blew
Yeah.
her mind. She's like, oh, malatang, this stuff is so dope. And then and then we tried making it at home together and stuff with like some store-bought stuff. I really appreciate it and how nice you were to my mom. And even just talking to you, like because when my mom asked you, hey, Michael, since you live in Japan, I know someone's friend who lives in Japan. Can you take these books back with you to Tokyo and then meet up with that person? I'm just like, Mom, don't ask a favor of my friend. Like you just met him for the first time. You have to ask me for. Do you remember how I got a little annoyed at my mom? But
Yeah.
you were so cool and you just understood and you were gracious and
Yeah.
you're like, hey, mom, you know what? The parents, older generation, maybe they don't understand like having a bit of like tact or how not
Yeah.
to make these like social faux pas and stuff. Like they just
Yeah.
weren't equipped or educated to do these kind of things. So
Yeah.
then I thought, oh damn, Michael's right. So like I learned, like that helped calm me down. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah. Of course. But no, I'm pretty accepting as long as I can tell someone has good intentions. So, and I still can't find the freaking book owner, by the way. But
Yeah. Yeah, I
it's
told
a
her.
real person.
I told her. That's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode, and please stay tuned for next week's episode, which is part 2 of this dope conversation that I have with Michael. It gets even doperer and harder, so don't miss out. If you like this episode, please share it with a friend. Peace.